Although Saigo Takamori was the rebel leader of the last civil war in Japan, historians are not sure how he died. There are several conflicting stories, but many of the eyewitnesses to his death died shortly afterward, leaving behind little information for modern scholars. Whether Saigo died from a gunshot wound or ritual suicide, his death still played a monumental role in the Satsuma rebellion, signaling the end of the samurai revolts against modernization. The samurai is one of the most well-known figures in Japanese culture. Much like the knights in medieval Europe, the samurai were professional soldiers tied into the feudal system. They were also bound to honor codes that dictated how they fought, lived, and interacted with others, regardless of social class. However, just like the European knights, when the feudalism system ended, the samurai found themselves without a job or the lifestyle they were accustomed to. In the latter half of the 1800s, Japan underwent a regime, governmental, and cultural change. The plight of the samurai was handled poorly. Left without a job or purpose, these trained warriors launched a rebellion. The Samurai Rebellion of 1877 significantly impacted modern-day Japan, so it's time to look deeper into this time of unrest. By understanding what caused the samurai to rebel, we can better understand how the samurai has shaped Japanese culture and glimpse the uncertainty surrounding any form of social change. What events led up to the Samurai Rebellion of 1877? The feudal system had been an essential part of Japanese politics for hundreds of years. The warring tribal lords had helped the shogun retain some power, but the nation was not unified. As Japan began encountering the Western world, it realized it needed unity. In its encounters with the United States and Western Europe, Japan saw that the Western world valued industry, constitutions, and a strong military, and it also wanted knowledge and political ties to improve unfair treaties. Japan was ready to build a modern state, which meant it would have to eliminate its feudal system. Emperor Meiji took the throne in 1867. He was part of overthrowing the previous emperor and spent the first 2 years of his reign putting down revolts led by deposed Emperor Yoshinobu. Once he had successfully put down support for the prior emperor, Emperor Meiji turned his attention to creating a modern nation out of Japan. Of course, this kind of change does not happen quickly and without angering part of the population. Uniting the nation required connecting the government. Many lords and local leaders were convinced to return their lands to the emperor in 1869. Emperor Meiji then began work on restructuring the domains and districts, reducing the number from about 250 to only 72. Some lords became governors, while others took on new titles, although they were essentially removed from political power. By restructuring the government, the Meiji administration also restructured the class system. Under Japanese feudalism, the class system was complex, and the samurai were honored. With modernization, there was no clear place for the samurai. They were not nobility or part of the government administration, but they were also not commoners. At first, the Meiji government called them shizoku, and the former samurai received annual pensions until 1876. At that point, the new government was struggling financially and gave the former samurai a lump payment in interest-bearing bonds. Now, the samurai had no traditional hairstyles, swords, or money sense. Most samurai did not know how to use their windfall well, and many squandered the money, which was also impacted by inflation. The samurai were adrift. The quickly changing culture, including dress styles and language, made many former samurai uneasy. The government did a poor job of giving the samurai direction or furnishing them with new skills to provide them with other career options. They lost their sole status as the nation's military, a fact emphasized by the conscription in 1873, and the samurai turned to rebellion without other skills or direction. The Samurai Rebellion of 1877 was one in a long line of rebellions across Japan. The samurai were trained as soldiers, so they called for wars to give them employment and allow them to use their skills. In January 1877, the same issues bubbled up to the surface. This time, the samurai launched one of the most memorable rebellions, forcing the Japanese government to take serious action against the samurai, who had once been a foundational part of Japanese culture and were now wandering adrift, lost in the modern world like people who had stepped out of time. What started the rebellion? The Satsuma Rebellion was the last samurai rebellion against the Meiji government. It was also the most serious and served as the final civil war in Japan. Saigo Takamori was a former samurai who actually briefly served in the Meiji government as one of the more experienced Satsuma leaders. As a former samurai, he was especially amenable to the plight of other former samurai. Saigo began pushing for war with Korea as early as 1873. He thought a war would ultimately bring Japan success while giving the samurai a job and a chance at a meaningful death. He was so committed that his plan included sacrificing himself by bringing up a previous protocol faux pas and allowing the Koreans to kill him. When the Meiji government refused to start a war, Saigo resigned and returned to Kagoshima. He was joined by many other former samurai in the police and military. In Kagoshima, Saigo established private schools focused on weapons and military training. The schools were clearly political organizations, and they supported the government of Satsuma, not the Meiji national government. By the end of 1876, Satsuma was basically separated from the central government, and tensions between the former samurai and the Meiji administration continued to fester. Saigo's private schools concerned the Meiji administration in Tokyo, especially in light of the other samurai rebellions that had occurred elsewhere. They decided to send 58 men to investigate. However, the men were captured and confessed under torture that they were there to assassinate Saigo. While the national government denied this was true, the people of Satsuma decided they needed a rebellion to protect Saigo. The government's concern only continued to grow. They emptied a weapons arsenal to prevent the rebellion, but Saigo's students responded by raiding several different arsenals and naval yards for themselves. Encouraged by all this support, Saigo agreed to lead the Samurai Rebellion of 1877. He marched his troops north and headed to Tokyo to ask the current government questions. Saigo wanted to keep as much of a flavor of legality as possible, so he initially declined additional volunteers and even wore his old military uniform. The first open hostilities did not begin until February 19, 1877. Saigo and his troops had crossed into the Kumamoto prefecture 5 days early and had laid siege to Kumamoto Castle. Lieutenant General Tani Tateki was determined to hold off Saigo's troops as long as possible, so he took a defensive position almost immediately. Saigo believed his troops could easily take the castle because the conscripted soldiers had uncertain loyalties. However, Saigo's army was not able to take the castle, even after the central portion of his army arrived and a number of the conscripted soldiers joined his forces. On April 12th, the Imperial Army arrived, forcing Saigo's forces to abandon the siege. Meanwhile, there were rebels in Kagoshima, located in Kyushu's southern prefecture. The Imperial Army attacked the town of Tabaruzaka. The town guarded Kumamoto, and about 15,000 former samurai held it against the national military. During the Battle of Tabaruzaka, Saigo wrote a letter to the Meiji administration, reminding them of his original intentions. He protested that he was not committed to the rebellion and was willing to negotiate. The national government wanted to suppress the rebellion forcefully and refused to discuss the situation peacefully. The Imperial Army soon drove Saigo's army away from Kumamoto, although the national victory came with heavy losses on both sides. Historians estimate both sides lost about 4,000 men apiece. From there, both sides were forced to pause briefly in the hostilities. Saigo's forces retreated to Miyazaki and hunkered down in preparation for the Imperial Army's next offensive attack. The national military took several weeks to acquire reinforcements. Still, on July 24th, they continued their brutal attacks, pushing Saigo's army out and eliminating as many of his forces as possible. Saigo and his men took a stand on Mount Inodaki. The Imperial Army surrounded and outnumbered them. Most of the rebel forces surrendered or committed ritual suicide. However, Saigo and around 500 of his men escaped. They fled to Shirayama, near the city of Kagoshima, and took it. On September 24th, the Imperial Army began the final battle in the Samurai Rebellion of 1877. They attacked the remaining rebels with extraordinary firepower from their artillery and 5 warships. By the end of the battle, only 40 men remained with Saigo. During the fight, Saigo was injured in the hip, possibly from a bullet wound, but the accounts of what happened next differ. Some sources say Saigo died from the bullet wound. Others say that he committed ritual suicide to preserve his honor. Still, other accounts say he went into shock from his wound, and his remaining followers cut off his head to protect his honor, assisting him with his ritual suicide. Although historians may never know exactly what happened, Saigo's death ended the Samurai Rebellion of 1877. The few remaining samurai plunged into the imperial army and met their deaths as the last remaining rebels of the Satsuma Rebellion. What happened after the rebellion ended? The Samurai Rebellion of 1877 was the last of the samurai rebellions against the Meiji government, allowing Japan to continue pushing into the modern era. However, it also saw the official end of the samurai class. The new conscripted army proved they were capable of defeating the great warriors, leading to an end of the social class and a greater focus on creating a more Western-styled army. The Japanese army also began focusing on modern weapons, such as rifles and artillery, because they proved more effective than ceremonial swords and traditional fighting methods. However, the Satsuma Rebellion did more than change how Japan approached its military. It also changed how Japan handled its money. The rebellion raised Japan's national debt by over 40 million pounds. The Meiji government had to deal with concerns about bankruptcy, leading to a substantial reduction in their spending while also selling off state-owned factories and mines. Savvy merchants and business people took advantage of the sale and quickly formed large firms. The only industries the government did not sell were the military industries, the railroad, and the telegraph. As a result of the rebellion, Japan eventually saw the rise of a thriving industry operating outside of the government's direct control. Overall, the Samurai Rebellion of 1877 was a critical turning point in Japanese history. The samurai had been an essential part of Japanese culture and a pillar of their feudal system, a social structure that had served Japan for hundreds of years. The Meiji government changed everything in only a few short years, and one of the consequences was the disruption of the samurai class. These warriors were left with no real prospects. It was only a matter of time before a leader like Saigo Takamori gathered enough support to push back against the Meiji administration. However, even though Saigo's forces were impressive, the rebellion proved the modern military was better equipped to handle warfare in the contemporary world. By the end of the Satsuma Rebellion, Japan had firmly entered the modern age, relegating samurai to stories and history books. Although the samurai are still an essential part of Japanese culture today, the rebellion proved that the nation would never be the same without them. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Japanese history, check out our book, History of Japan, a captivating guide to Japanese history, including events such as the Genpei War, Mongol invasions, Battle of Tsushima, and atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.